All right, hello everyone. We'll go ahead and get started on time here at 4:45, and we'll get going here. So thanks for coming today. I hope you're all enjoying the past summit so far, day 2, I guess, of the main sessions and everything. So my name is Lance. This fine gentleman here is Dhananjay. Today we'll be talking to you about Azure Arc and the different observability tools that you have available to help manage and improve your hybrid SQL Server estate observability through Azure Arc. And simply by the way, introductions, like I said, my name's Lance. I work at Microsoft, and I work on Arc-enabled SQL Server, and specifically work on our telemetry and intelligence solutions for that product. And Dhananjay, you want to take a moment to tell the folks who you are?
Hi everyone. Thanks, Lance. I'm Dhananjay Mahajan, or DJ, or Dhan, DJ Data. I'm also on the same team as Lance and head the product management for all the SQL hybrid products that we have, Arc-enabled SQL Server and Arc-enabled Data Services. I've worked at Microsoft, Amazon and Oracle and several other cloud companies building cloud products, primarily hybrid cloud. So yeah, excited to talk to you. Thanks for coming over, and I know it's the last session for the day.
Yep.
So we'll make it worth your while.
Yes, definitely. So, all right. So what have you all gotten into? Let's talk about it. So we'll talk about some key takeaways that we hope you all take away from the session in a minute. Dhananjay here, he's actually going to give you all a quick introduction to Azure Arc-enabled SQL Servers. Actually, we should have changed the slide. The new marketing term is SQL Servers enabled by Azure Arc. So if you hear the two terms, they're interchangeable, they're the same thing. Nothing's really changed under the hood, just the marketing label on the front. So, and then we're gonna give you a rundown of the observability tools that are available to you to help manage your hybrid and multi-cloud SQL Server estates. We'll be talking about the inventory capabilities that you get. We'll be using Azure Resource Graph. We'll be talking about the best practices assessment tool, Defender, which is a great tool to help defend and protect your SQL and data workloads. And then newly announced this week is our newest feature, which is the SQL performance dashboards that just started rolling out this week into public preview. And we'll give you all a rundown of how that looks, and you can start using it when you get home. So, but yeah, in terms of key takeaways, like I said, we want you to hopefully have a better understanding of how to better manage, secure, and optimize your hybrid and multi-cloud workloads. Have a deeper knowledge of the observability tools that are available to you through Azure Arc. And like I said, we'll give you a rundown of the new performance dashboards that are now available in public preview to help you gain visibility into the performance of your SQL servers. And with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Dhananjay to give us a quick rundown of SQL Server enabled by Azure Arc.
Yeah, thanks, Lance. So observability is important. We all know that monitoring is important. How many of you have your SQL servers running in any cloud? Let's say Amazon or even Azure for sure.
Yeah, most folks.
Anyone have it in Google Cloud?
Yeah.
Or on-premises? On-premises, quite a few.
Yeah.
Everybody has it on-premises. So I'm going to give you a little bit. How many of you know about Azure Arc? I know I see some familiar faces. So about half of you know. So I might do a little bit of a quick introduction on what Azure Arc is. As you see, every one of us has SQL servers or your resources running in multiple clouds. And so as DBAs, as developers, the new challenge is that now you have additional complexity, that you have some servers on premises, some servers in Azure cloud, and some servers potentially in multi-cloud. And when I talk to some of the customers that, Lance and I talk to our customers, they're like, this is complex, I want consistency, I want a single platform to manage it. And really, there's nothing out there in the market that does something similar to what we deliver with Azure Arc. So for you to manage your complexity for SQL servers across on-premises, across Azure cloud, and then also third-party clouds, that's where the hybrid challenges come in. Now, Azure Arc is a product line and a platform. So it gives you the single plane of control to manage both infrastructure and services. So it's infrastructure like servers, virtual, physical, even clusters running on Kubernetes, running on VMware. All of those can be managed. So the Arc can be split into Arc for infrastructure, Arc for services, and SQL Server is one of the services. What it gives you is a single view of all the IT and SQL assets that you want to manage, monitor, operate, provide resiliency, high availability, disaster recovery. And this allows you to extend your cloud not just within Azure, but also across Azure. There's another conference going a couple of blocks down called Ignite. And that's where they introduce this whole concept about adaptive cloud, which goes from your data center all the way to cloud, but also all the way to edge. And we as Microsoft want to provide you that single solution so you can automate, get cost savings, and optimize. And as folks from the SQL team, Lance and I want you to have the best performance wherever you're running SQL, because that's the database of your choice. That's the only database available on cloud. So we want to give you the flexibility of moving across on-premises and Azure cloud. And we know that due to compliance, consistency, latency, data gravity reasons, you can't do it all at once. So Azure Arc is a platform and a set of services that allow you to start consuming Azure services on-premises that you get with Azure SQL on-premise, Defender in some of them, Defender best practices analysis even outside of Azure, and slowly start getting ready to move those services into Azure cloud at your pace. So we want to meet you where you are. And that's where comes in SQL Server enabled by Azure Arc. So I'm going to talk a little bit about SQL Server enabled by Azure Arc, assuming you folks are not into infrastructure. And then we will go into aspects of specifically around observability. Yesterday, Dinkar and Raj did a great session on manage, operate, and optimize and secure your SQL servers wherever they are. And we are going only into the observability and monitoring part. So I would highly encourage you to see Dinkar and Raj's session if you haven't. So with SQL Server for Azure Arc, we want to bring cloud manageability for SQL Server anywhere, wherever it is. And this is your existing SQL servers from 2012 and above. Now, last year when we were at PIAS, we talked about another Azure Arc-enabled service called Azure Arc-enabled Data Services. That was our solution, and that's still our solution available to you. It's in GA if you're running Kubernetes clusters. What we found out talking to many of our customers is Kubernetes is slow in adoption. Why don't you give us the same services on my existing SQL? It's running on Windows, it's running on Linux, and that's where we said, okay, we'll listen to what you're saying. We want you to manage, govern, and protect those SQL servers even without requiring Kubernetes. So today, Lance and I are going to talk about capabilities of monitoring and observability for the SQL server that runs outside of Kubernetes. Doesn't require Kubernetes. It can run on Windows, Linux, in virtual, physical, so that you can manage with a single view, manage to get better observability. So 3 of the pillars that we have really focused on is managing and giving you better observability across these clouds, enhancing business continuity, which Dinkar covered yesterday, and then govern and protect your SQL real estate wherever it is. So getting you key performance metrics, and that's what Lance and I are going to go through, giving you proactive assessment of best practices, and then from a purview standpoint, giving you insights into how you can do data governance, Other capabilities which were discussed in the other, and also Defender to secure your data assets. Other capabilities are extended security updates, failover clustered, availability groups, which were covered in yesterday's session. We'll leave that for now. So looking at observability, what are some of the use cases? How many of you have an inventory of all your SQL servers wherever they reside? Oh, pretty good across all. And you want to keep it up to date. You want to make sure that you have a good sense of what server you manage. Another area is data, moving that data across clouds. So are you able to move all your data into Azure cloud on day one? What challenges do you have? Any reasons not moving it? Yeah.
Certain data is not allowed in the cloud.
Yes. Certain data with privacy and compliance concerns, certain data that may have constraints in certain regions in the world to be compliant with those governance laws of data cannot be moved. Any other reasons why folks have not moved their data into the cloud? Latency is another good one. I work with a manufacturing customer who is collecting data from sensors, and they want to make immediate decisions and have a dashboard, and they store all that data in SQL, and they want immediate performance so that there's no round tripping of that data. Any other reasons? Yes, locality is another one. You want to have the data close to your application. We work with a transportation company. You must have seen it. I'm sure they deliver packages. And for them, locality of the data where the package is being delivered so that they can track their trucks is very important. So yeah, we have lots of those challenges to move that data, and we realize that. But at the same time, you want security, manageability, governance of your data. Now, we want to make sure also another key reason is you want to consistently configure all your SQL servers wherever they are. So if you're moving your data or applications or replicating them across regions, you want to have that consistent. Also, with all this data real estate spread across these clouds, you want to manage your risk because there may be vulnerabilities if this, any of the SQL servers get compromised. And then also understand how your performance is and how you can use. So Lance is going to go through performance. So in comes Arc. With Azure Arc, that's your SQL server. It can reside on either a third-party cloud like AWS, Google Cloud, or any other cloud, or within your data center, which may be running on physical or virtual, on VMware, on Nutanix. Once you connect those SQL servers to Azure, you start using all these great services. Inventory, which gives you a view of all your databases wherever they reside, all in a single view. Best practices assessment, and we'll go through a little bit of a demo of best practices assessment that gives you an understanding, are these all configured using best practices that we know, the SQL Server team has figured out over the years. We run SQL in the cloud, so we want to make sure that you get knowledge of our best practices. Are they automatically backed up on-premise? Can you restore them? Just like a cloud database, you should be able to restore them. You can get a Defender for SQL Server, which is available for Azure SQL. You can get data governance through Purview, disaster recovery in the cloud, and also many of our customers who have large deployments of SQL Server, they want to know how is the license usage being done. Another key benefit which we covered yesterday was we have introduced a new pay-as-you-go model. So now that you get visibility into performance usage of those SQL servers, you can decide if you want to go with a pay-as-you-go model and not have to pay those license fees. So how does this all work? Let me first give you a little bit of the background of how this works, and then we'll go into the actual solutions. So it's a very simple process. If you remember what we did for Arc-enabled data services, you had to set up a Kubernetes cluster, you had to download some kubectl commands and a few things, and then you had to get started. This is very easy. You have a SQL server running on Windows or Linux in physical or virtual. What you do is you get a script, and this is I'll first talk about how you do it for a simple server. So whatever your architecture is on premises or in a third-party cloud, you download a script to set up Arc server. So one of the prerequisites for Arc-enabled SQL Server is that you set up Arc server and connect your server to Azure using an agent that comes with Arc server. And you get a simple script that you can download, and you can run that script on Arc server, make sure all the right ports are open, that's port 443. And once you've done that, in step 2, all the local services that are required as part of the Arc agent get created. Now, step 2 connects to, that helps you connect to the Azure cloud. So now what happens is that you suddenly start seeing the reflection of that server, which is on your data center in the Azure portal. So now Azure knows about your server and now expands its view beyond the Azure cloud into your data center. Think of your data center becoming an extension of the Azure cloud because it's now managed by Azure. On the Arc-enabled server, the agent then may detect. Now, all of your servers may not have SQL Server, but maybe your servers have SQL Server. As soon as it detects SQL Server, it automatically downloads and enables the extension to manage SQL servers that are on that Arc-enabled server. So that's step number 3. And now SQL servers also start showing up in your Azure portal. So now you have SQL servers, you have Azure servers, all of them showing in your portal. And you can start consuming Azure services on premises. You can get a single view, you can get inventory, and I'll go through that in a demo. So with that, if you start using BPA or some of the services, let me quickly finish this and then I'll come to your question. Azure Monitoring Agent gets deployed as step number 4 if you're using some of these additional services on monitoring. And if you want to do this at scale, I was talking to a customer who is in the a big petroleum manufacturer. They're like, we have 10,000 SQL servers. I can't go and download scripts on each one of them. So there are several ways, which is in documentation. You can either do unattended PowerShell scripts. You can set up a group policy. So whenever a server gets connected, it gets an update. You can use System Center Configuration Manager. Or you can also use Azure Update Services. There are multiple ways. Or you can use scripts to download these on thousands of servers. And literally, it takes, even for tens of thousands of servers, a few hours, couple of hours. For one server, it's like literally 5 minutes to enable it. Yep. And then when the script runs for detection, you get SQL Server. So it's way simpler than before. So let me take a pause, and the only thing you need to do is make sure that the prerequisites and port 443 has been enabled. So question?
Yes, I guess my question was, how do you ultimately manage the inventory? So I guess you've got 10,000 servers, right? But you only want to put 1,000 of them in Arc. Does that ultimately mean you're only putting the agent on 1,000, and that's how you decide what's managed there and what's not?
Yeah. So what you can do is you can actually scope the agents that you want to deploy it to. Make sure that that's part of the script. Unless you target those agents, you create those resource groups. And even within those agents, you can, if you don't want SQL servers, like I'm working with a large retailer who has tens of thousands of SQL servers, and they just want their SQL Server 2012s to be enabled for SQL Server first, because if you know, with Arc, you get ESU, right? You can go to pay-as-you-go, or you can use ESU as a service. So they just wanted that. So what they did is made sure that they had the right resource group created, which was Arc-enabled servers. And within those, they tagged those servers which did not require a SQL Server agent on it. So they created an exclusion list. And only 8 servers were the ones that had 2012. And that's the way. So we have multiple ways. There's like nuanced ways that you can do this. But yeah, absolutely. You have full control over what you want to deploy. Now, many customers said once they have done the POC or testing, we just want to blast it out to everything. And if a new server comes in, we just want that to be auto-enabled. Then you use Azure policy to set those rules. So we have given you full flexibility of that.
Once the agent is installed and it's enabled, discovered, pops up in the inventory, and you can consume services, additional services. What about the SQL engine itself, like creating a new database or creating a new login? How does that happen? Can I give that to my developers? Like, can they use the Azure protocol to create a database from a server instance?
OK, good question.
Yep.
To repeat the question for the audience in the recording, the question was, if now that you have Arc-enabled and SQL extension has been installed, what actions can you take other than inventory? Can you have a new database creation done from the portal? So is that correct? Sorry, yeah. So today we don't have that functionality to create a database from the portal. But Dinkar is sitting here, and so he would be happy to hear your use cases on whether you want to create SQL servers and databases from the portal. We are on a rapid path of, this product is probably a year old, maybe at most. And so we release on a monthly basis, and we are here to get feedback from you. If there's a good use case for doing that, we first start by not touching your SQL servers at all. The SQL Server engine has to run the best. So Arc as itself does not change the engine, does not change the functionality. It is more currently observing, taking backups, restoring it, making sure it runs in a highly available configuration. But as we go along, we want to do more and more of tasks that you can do centrally. So we'd love to hear from you. Today, that functionality is not there. Yeah.
Just a quick question about, you obviously installed the Arc-enabled server, which you've got your agents on. Is it proactive at discovering everything else, or can you control what it's reaching out to? Or have I kind of taken that the wrong way? Do you need to give a list of servers that it discovers, or does it do perform self-discovery? Does it go out looking for?
So question was, how does the discovery of the Arc server servers happen so that they can get the list of servers where Arc has to be enabled? Dinkar, do you know exactly what? Do we give a list? I know that you can give a list, but the other discovery, is there like auto detection?
No, we don't auto discover other servers. We have to tell us what servers you want to
Yeah.
enable.
Or you set up a policy that says anytime you see a server centrally, that gets deployed. Or if you're using SCCM, then if SCCM detects a server, and if there is a policy that says anytime you detect a server, push this package to it and run the script, that's what will happen. But Arc itself is not trying to duplicate any of that. Yeah.
When you say Arc-enabled server, that means you are installing the Arc services on each and every VM server. So someone has disabled the service, we cannot detect that.
The question is if
Go and disable the services.
Yeah, so the question was if you're running the service on the Arc-enabled server, and if you turn off that service, does
Manually go on.
yeah. So yeah, certainly you could disable the service and the agent from communicating to Azure. Obviously, that would limit the functionality of the Arc-enabled server. But yeah, someone could go on and turn it off. I don't know if
But
is
that's
there
where,
mechanisms to.
In the Azure portal, you can go to the
yeah.
server, there is a status, it tells you whether it's
Yep.
connected or not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll be noted. Like you can monitor and see what's connected,
be-
disconnected,
Yeah.
when it was last connected, and then you can take action to figure out, okay,
Yeah.
do I need to restart the service? Is the box off?
Like
Whatever the
one
case
of
may
the
be.
most common problems we have seen, not very common, but when when the customer says, hey, I'm not seeing any updates from the server, usually they have turned off some ports. Some
Yeah.
policy has come in and they have shut off. So they might have opened up the port to do the POC, and then some other infrastructure team came in and ran a policy to shut down the port. So you can detect all this from the Arc portal.
Yep.
Yeah.
What we are going to use this one? See, 1433 is SQL default.
What the question is, what port? So 443 is the port that Arc uses. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, like the port.
Be enabled on each and every.
Correct.
Correct.
And which is generally enabled. Which is generally enabled. Yeah.
Yeah.
So before the Arc-enabled,
No, it's not.
Arc-enabled, what is that actually? Two different components. Arc-enabled server, another one the Arc-enabled SQL server.
Yes.
Services or what?
Yeah. So if you see here, so the question is Arc-enabled server and Arc-enabled SQL server, are those two separate services?
So you see two services on each and every server.
Yeah. So Arc-enabled server is the foundation service. That's the agent. That agent can, once the agent is deployed, it sets up the communication with Azure. And then Arc is a whole suite of products. And we are here just to talk about SQL Server. There's Azure Arc for machine learning. There is Azure Arc for VMware. So all these extensions get enabled on that agent. And so you'll see, depending on what you're using, because Arc has lots of other solutions as well, you'll start seeing those services come up. And even in this case, as we enable BPA and others, the agent gets installed. But this is all under the covers. It all happens, and you don't have to worry about it.
One clarification to make though. We will only install the SQL extension if we discover that there's a SQL server running. So it's
Yeah.
not always yes, you need it's called the connected machine agent that connects your server. And then if we happen to detect a SQL server on that box, then we'll install that second agent for the SQL server. So if you have an application server that doesn't have SQL server on it, for example, you just get the one agent on there. Does that make sense? Yeah.
You mentioned 443, is there any way you can change that as a configuration option? Because we can lock on 443 because of this.
The question was, can you change the port 443? I don't know. We have not had a customer so far who has said, can we change that? We can take that question back to the Arc. So just from an organizational stand, the agent team is a different team. And so they take care of the communication, so we can find out from them if that port is configurable through policy. What they're doing, this is coming, I'm giving some future information, they're going to create a gateway because of all these problems, right? And so pretty soon, even like 443, I don't know if it solves the blocking of 443, but now every Arc service will go through that gateway, which is an Arc gateway. And then that way you have a single point of understanding how all the Arc communication is going. So that's a mitigation. Yes?
I assume the local service has to have SQL Server admin access.
Yeah. So the question is, SQL Service has to have admin access. You just answered that.
Yeah, I can take that one. So yeah, basically what happens is there's a low-level system account that has just the least privileges necessary to operate the communication back to Azure. So it's not, historically we did have to have grants added, sysadmin grants added to NT Authority system, but we've recently started switching over to a least privileges model to a low-level system account. So it only gets the permissions that it needs. It's just a low-level local system account.
Local system.
Yeah, local system.
These sort of things, or it doesn't matter? Does it have admin access in the SQL Server?
It has sufficient access to detect what databases and metadata about the databases are. And it only for that small period of time uses that account and then then goes down to lower privileges. This is a functionality we are just releasing. So if you're interested in that, we have our contacts at the end. We'll be happy to review with you the design approach we have used so that initially it was the NT system account that we used, which was a no-no for some of our customers. This one we have actually tested with some of our most stringent customers, and we have explained to them that this is an account that has access only for a period of time where we need to do the discovery and inventory of the SQL databases and the metadata related to it. But it's a fair ask that we have been getting to make sure that.
I guess my concern is that you're adding extra administrators on the SQL Server, and you've got another way of getting into SQL Server from the cloud, got the control access to that, make sure no one can then do things on the SQL Server.
Correct.
They shouldn't be allowed to do
Yeah.
on premise.
No, so those scenarios, as you know, Microsoft is big on security. So we have our best security experts in SQL who have reviewed the design and made sure that the design is robust in that sense. While I can't disclose all the details here yet, if you are interested in it, do contact us. But we make sure that your data is important to be secure. And if we do anything in the agent that compromises security, we won't be releasing that type of a product. But there has to be sufficient access to that agent so we can at least detect what databases are installed, what version is installed. And I'll go through that to show you a demo.
Yep. There was one more question.
Oh, one more question.
Yep.
Still regarding the port, as I understand, we have to open port 443 on our firewall towards the internet, which is a big no-no because every security person will say you cannot connect your service to the internet. Okay, that's one thing. So is there a limited list of URLs of data center IP?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
That our firewall guys can implement?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a documented list. If you go to aka.ms or aka.ms/arcdocs, there's a whole section for Arc-enabled servers. And in there is a list of all, I think the page is called connected network requirements. If you search network requirements, that'll come up.
Yeah.
Correct. There's like a dozen URLs or so on there, and it tells you. Yes. Yes. Yeah. All of them should be on
Yeah,
there.
all the prerequisites are listed
Correct.
on that page.
Yes.
And like I said, we list out every endpoint that's required to be enabled to be accessible from Azure. Most of our communication is outbound to Azure in terms of sending the logs, and he's going to go through that architecture. So keep that in mind as you look at it. And then, like I mentioned, there's also this gateway that we are creating. So that way, you don't have to create a long list of ports. Everything will go through the gateway, and the gateway is this.
The
URLs,
sorry, URL,
yes,
yeah.
yes. Yeah, the URL list is in that doc.
Yeah.
Server, the gateway, or it's 20 servers, it's the same problem.
Correct,
Sure.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, yep.
Just to bounce back to is there a document list the number of permissions required granted to SQL Server?
Yes.
Is there a document of the permissions required for SQL Server? And yes, we are going to, and I'm also going to write a blog on that pretty soon to make it easier, because documentation is a bit sparse in terms of you'll have to look at 4 or 5 different pages to gather this. So there has been feedback like, hey, can you make it easier for us to understand? So we are also writing a blog to help that out, and potentially a white paper that you can take to your InfoSec or security team and just show them the detailed analysis of how we have secured the system. But good questions.
Yeah, excellent questions.
Yeah. Anything else? So once you have enabled this connection, Arc-enabled the servers, Arc-enabled the SQL servers, the observability is more than just monitoring. We want you to give you a full understanding of your SQL Server estate, the inventory, and doing it at scale using Azure Resource Graph, securing it using Defender, making sure that configured with the best practices using best practices assessment, helping you understand the performance with the performance dashboard, and then license visibility. So to begin with, I'll start with inventory and then hand it off to Lance for best practices assessment. For inventory, the agent transmits all the metadata that it collects about the SQL servers that are running and the databases that it detects over centrally. So if a SQL server is not running on a server, the extension does not get enabled. There's no SQL-related data. There's nothing to be transmitted. But once you have SQL Server and this agent extension is installed, all the metadata collected will be sent centrally, so you can assess, view all your SQL servers and their databases. So how does this look? Let's take a, I have to come out of this,
Yep.
right? OK.
And then just tab over. Yep.
OK. So this is the Azure portal. I'm going to walk you through the Azure portal. We have preloaded some tabs just to make it a lot faster. The Wi-Fi in this corner is rather slow, so bear with us. So this is the Azure Arc portal entry point. As I mentioned, Azure Arc is not just about SQL servers. It's about servers, infrastructure, VMware, Kubernetes. So you can look at starting here, and you can get an Arc box, which is a pre-configured Arc deployment for free, or you can add infrastructure, or you can install Azure services. So if you go to infrastructure, you get all these various infrastructure services that I talked about, which can be connected to Azure, and you can start managing them as if you're managing them in Azure itself. Or you can get the services, and the services that we talk about is PostgreSQL, SQL Managed Instance, and Arc-enabled SQL Server, which comes under, I guess, infrastructure. Yeah.
Nice.
So this is the Azure Arc portal. Now, if you go into the
Sorry, before you move
Yeah.
on, Dhananjay, I don't think we talk about this enough, but this ArcBox is a great option to get started. If you click Try ArcBox, it actually gives you all the resources that you need to just kind of start in a sandbox type environment. And it really only takes maybe about 15 minutes to set up. So if you need to just run a little test deployment, you don't want to actually connect your servers or SQL servers, that's a great option for like kind of a self-contained sandbox just to play around and have it be ephemeral that you can spin down and just get rid of. So I feel like we don't talk about it enough. I was
That's
just thinking
true.
about all the questions that we're getting about security and things like that.
Yeah.
It's a great option to kind of get the full stack without any risk to your actual environment.
Yeah.
So would
And this was
highly-
just released, so
yeah, would
that's a
highly
good point.
recommend that. So,
Yeah.
yep. Yeah, so here it kind of tells you the cost of that. So there is a cost associated with it because you are spinning up some environments, but you can spin down like the VMs and things like that at the end of the day. So yeah, there is some cost to running VMs, because these are VMs that are actually running in Azure to set up that sandbox environment for you. But you can spin them down at the end of the day. You have them auto shut off at the end of the day if you want to play around with it.
Yeah.
So.
Great point. Great
Yep.
point. And if you are already working with Microsoft field sales folks, talk to your account manager. There might be like a trial period. I don't know.
Yeah.
We are from a product team, so we don't discuss or we don't have any access to the discounts you folks get. But yeah, there might be a small charge, but you can also have some free capabilities included. But yeah, good point. So if you want to test it out, that's a quick way to get started. Now, for today's demos, we're going to use this Smart Hotel deployment. Smart Hotel is a small data center that Smart Hotel uses, just kind of like Contoso. But we had to put Smart Hotel, which uses applications, databases. They have various data centers, and they have Arc-enabled all their data centers and managing them centrally. So as I look at Smart Hotel, and I've Arc-enabled it. I can see my VMs, I can see my servers, and then I also see that I've put this all into a resource group, which is a logical way to group things. And then I can see not only my SQL servers, but also the databases running in it. So I'm going to click on one of the SQL servers. And this is metadata that the extension has collected. And as you can see, I know which, now this is the location where the resource group is, East US. So you want to make sure that you get a location where Arc services are available. This looks like Hotel 1 is a developer edition. If it was a standard or enterprise edition, then it would be considered as a paid edition. And if you have software assurance, then the services that Lance and I are going to talk about are going to be enabled by default. So if it's not a paid edition, Arc is not enabled by default. There's no charge for Arc for paid editions or SA if you have SA.
Does it report the exact version edition, numbers?
Yeah, great question. And I'll get to the question was, do you get the exact number? So over here in the dashboard, we see it's 2017. It's running on Windows. The last time the inventory information was uploaded. So if it is out of date, it says this has license with software assurance. So all the services are enabled. And automated patching is disabled on this. You know what version of SQL Server is. Sorry, this is the SQL Server extension. And if backup is enabled on it, when was the backup taken? What's the configuration policy for the backup? When full backups are taken, differential backups. I'm not going to get into backups today. You can either come to the booth or look at Dinkar's sessions. But like I said, it covers a lot of information about the metadata collected. But if you click on JSON view, there's really more information that has been collected. And that goes to the information that you are looking at is the current version is shown here, but also what patch level this is at. And Lance is going to show you how to mine this information at scale. This is just looking at one server. Now, if I go to Hotel SQL 1, I can also look at the databases inside of it. So I can click on, let's say, Smart Hotel Registration, and I'm getting all the information when that database was created, whether it's using compatibility, and all the various flags that you need to understand how the database is doing. So this inventory information, like I said, is available to you because SQL Server, oops, not that yet. SQL Server is metadata is getting collected by the agent and centrally being managed. Now, question for you, Lance.
Yeah.
If I have to do this across thousands of servers with tens of thousands of databases, how can I do that?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about that. So
Yeah.
let me take over from you for a second. Let me just flip back to the presentation just for a second to kind of ground us here. So there is a built-in tool in Azure called Azure Resource Graph. And it's kind of a hidden gem. I feel like not enough people know about it, kind of similar to the Arc box that I jumped in and shared with everyone. But basically what's happening here is, as Dhananjay was talking about, when you Arc-enable your SQL servers and your servers for that matter, since we've been talking about those a lot, they become Azure resources. So, and just to be clear, obviously we're not migrating, well, I should say not obviously, but we're not migrating your data to Azure. It's just simply connecting to Azure in a way, right? But it's connecting in a way that you can see those SQL servers and your servers as Azure resources. And Dhananjay showed a lot of the metadata that we are pulling from those SQL servers and servers. And you can use that metadata to build a dashboard within Azure Resource Graph. And basically that gives you kind of a single place to go to view kind of at scale, as Dhananjay was mentioning, all of your SQL servers, all of your databases, and some metadata that we're collecting about those. So let me actually show you what that looks like in the Azure portal. And Dhananjay almost spoiled it, but it's okay. Yeah, so here we are. This is the dashboards view in Azure. And the reason I say like not enough people know about it is kind of a little bit hidden behind this, I call it the hamburger menu. But behind the menu here, there is a dashboards option here, and you can build your own dashboards within Azure. And so here's a dashboard that I actually didn't create it, but I will show you how to get access to this dashboard. But here, there's a dashboard here. I can see how many servers I have. I can see, this isn't just about Arc-enabled SQL servers, although I can see those. But if I also have some Azure SQL DBs or Azure SQL servers running on Azure VMs or Azure SQL managed instances, I can bring all of those data, all of those different SQL servers together in this view. I can also see all the databases that are running across all of those SQL servers. Again, it doesn't matter if these are, happen to be running in Azure or on my Arc-enabled SQL server. I can get information about those. Here's a details table. I know Dhananjay, he showed us a big old table of all of the Arc-enabled SQL servers that are that are connected to Azure. But this is a table that I can actually customize to get exactly the columns that I'm looking for. So here, for example, I can see if the license type's set to paid. I can see if ESUs are turned on. I can see at scale the extension versions and things like that. I can see, oops, I was going to show this and well, I might as well show you since I'm here. So how I got to this view is you can click on any of these tiles and you can actually see the query that's being run behind the scenes that created that tile. Now, this is using what's called Kusto query language, so it is a bit of a learning curve. I've had to learn it myself over the past year or so. There's all sorts of resources out there. ChatGPT, I'll just give it a plug, is an excellent resource to learn Kusto query language. We can just say, hey, here's my SQL statement, here's what I want to do. Can you spit out the KQL equivalent? And it'll do that for you. But here you can see what's the query that's going on behind the scenes to basically render these visuals. You can obviously adjust the queries to your liking to get the dashboard to look just the way that you want. And we're going to kind of keep scrolling through here to show you some more charts. So here I can see how many SQL servers I have per edition, how many cores I have per edition, so summing up all the cores by edition. I can see my compat levels, so if I'm hunting to see how many instances are still on compat level 100, that'd be super easy to pull up really quick at scale in this Azure Resource Graph. You can also see by version. Here's a pretty interesting one. It doesn't look like all of our databases have an encryption policy turned on. So that just helped me to identify some potential vulnerabilities that we need to look into. And then I can see that most of my SQL servers aren't enrolled into Defender, which we'll talk about here in just a second. So we're going to need to go back and make sure that we capture those in the Microsoft Defender product. So here's a great, here's another one, backup policies. A lot of my instances here, the backups are older than a month. We need to look into those, or almost over a quarter of them don't have any backups at all. So here's high-level information that I've gained about my entire SQL Server estate and all the databases running on them to help me gain that visibility across my inventory here. So a very powerful tool. And I mentioned this actually isn't a dashboard that I created. If you go out to, if you just do a quick Google search for GitHub SQL Server samples, there's a whole GitHub repository out there, and this is where I got that dashboard from. It was actually created by one of they're called Global Black Belts, which is an awesome title. One of our GBBs, he created this dashboard because he got tired of having to create it for his customers to help them, gain at-scale visibility into their SQL Server state. So if you go out to SQL Server Samples GitHub, this dashboard's out there for anyone to use, and all you have to do is click this upload button, and you just upload a JSON file that you download from that GitHub repo. So definitely recommend that for kind of an at-scale visibility. Really quickly, it literally takes about 5 minutes to get set up on that. So that's the Azure Resource Graph demo. Let's talk about best practices assessment for a few minutes. And we'll jump back and forth from the portal here. So if you attended Raj and Dinakar's session last night, they also talked a little bit about this. But the best practices assessment is a tool that you can use on your Arc-enabled SQL servers where you are basically leveraging decades of Microsoft experience helping our customers with SQL Server, with our PaaS SQL offerings. There's over 300 checks that get run on your Arc-enabled SQL servers that you can specify to run on your schedule. You can have them run weekly, you can have them run monthly. You could go in there and have a report run every day if you wanted to. And basically, the checks kind of fall into these 5 buckets, security, availability, performance, operations, change and configuration management. And it looks a little something like this. And we definitely recommend it, we could have made that a little bigger. We definitely recommend it to all of our customers to help them proactively manage and improve their SQL Server estate. And this is a really, low-cost option. The best practice assessment actually doesn't cost any money. It does consume a little bit of Log Analytics Workspace. If you're heavy Log Analytics Workspace users, might be as small, maybe a couple dollars a month, depending on the size of your inventory, incremental cost to getting this best practices assessment. And what that looks like, actually I did that kind of quick. Let me go back. So I'm still here on our Smart Hotel SQL 1 instance. And you can see this is an Arc-enabled SQL Server instance. And there's an option here to go to best practices assessment. And you can see here it's been run a number of times. There's some issues getting this set up or whatever. And then it's scheduled to run every week on Sunday at midnight, local machine time. So I can take a look at what was the most recent run of the best practices assessment and take a look at the results. And here at the top, it tells me how many of the 400 or so, I guess we're almost doing 400 checks here, how many of the 400 checks passed, how many are medium severity, low severity, informational, or there is a high severity one, so I don't have any high severity notifications, which is awesome. And then down below here, I can see a summary of all of the recommendations that the best practices assessment has. And I can click into any of these and get some details about them. And basically tells me a message that I need to check into. And here's a description they need. Lots of these are blurred out, obviously, for privacy reasons. But here's a high-level description about what I need to look into on this particular SQL Server. And a lot of times, there's actually links out to the SQL Server documentation that you can just copy and paste into your web browser and get some more information. So we've had a number of customers use the best practices assessment tool to help them gain that visibility in terms of what they can improve on their SQL servers to better improve their operations and uptime. So, yeah, question?
Can you disable some tests for certain databases? Because do not always are in control of what's in the database.
Sure.
The compatibility level, because we have third-party vendors.
Sure. Yeah, no, good question. So the question is it configurable? Can you have it not run on certain databases? Things like that. So the answer to that is today, not yet. We are working on some enhancements to make it a little bit more configurable to, target or exclude certain databases or exclude certain rules, things like that. So we are working on that, but not yet today. So, yeah.
All shift from Azure Arc-machine straight to Log Analytics? You just query the custom as well normally?
Sorry.
This all this information is in your Log
Oh,
Analytics.
correct.
Log
Yeah.
law.
So you can just query the custom for your regular queries across.
You sure could. Yep. Yeah, so the question was, this is getting written to Log Analytics Workspace, so I'd be able to query that law for short and basically create my own query for that. And the answer is yes. Yep. All right.
When this will be available to general public?
Yeah, this is available today, actually. Yep. Does it say preview somewhere?
No.
If it does, we're going to get rid of it. But no, the best practices assessment's been out for a number of months now, available for you to use today. Like I mentioned, the best practice assessment itself is free. It does consume a little bit of Log Analytics Workspace. I did the math one day, and it's like if you have 1,000 instances, it's $2 a month. But Log Analytics Workspace comes with a pretty generous 5 GB tier. So if you're able to kind of stay under that tier, it would be free even on the law side. So, yeah. Oh, it sure does. This is, when it says preview here, this is an internal build of Azure for us Microsoft employees. So yeah, you can ignore that. Best practice assessment is available today. Yep, good catch. Thank you. Okay, sounds good. So Dhananjay, we've talked about best practices assessments. Can you tell us a little bit about the Defender for SQL Server and how it helps you to harden and improve the security of your SQL servers?
Yeah. So as we talked about this, even security of our SQL and data assets is very important. I'll quickly go through this because I want to give him time back so we can talk about the latest and greatest that's coming out. Defender has been available for a while, and what it does is just like you get Microsoft Defender for SQL Server in Azure SQL, you can now have all your databases outside of Azure being continuously assessed for data protection using Microsoft Defender for Cloud and Microsoft Defender for SQL Server. It continuously assesses, secures, hardens the SQL servers, gives you alerts on threats and vulnerability that it detects, and provides advanced threat protection, and can also integrate with your SIEM or use Microsoft Sentinel or integrate with your in your environment external SIEM that you may be using, tool that you may be using for incident management. And you can immediately remediate any kind of potential vulnerabilities that might get detected. So let's go into a quick demo of Defender. Back to the portal.
It should be
Okay.
that one. Yep.
Okay, so here's Defender. Now in Smart Hotel has deployed SQL servers and they Arc-enabled them, and has also installed Microsoft Defender through policy or through using scripting. And as a result of that, the monitoring agent has got deployed and Defender is collecting all the data. And now I can see there are 70 containers out of 76 app services requiring upgrade on all 10 of them. But more importantly, for the database servers, we need upgrades. So it quickly pulls together all the information and summarizes what is most relevant for me. So when I have tens of thousands of databases and thousands of servers, it quickly pops out what's important. And it looks like there is an alert here, a security alert of high severity.
Oh, what happened?
What happened? Okay, so potential SQL injection. So it has detected over here on the dashboard, there are 27 open alerts, but one of them is a high alert. And 15 resources are affected through all these potential problems. But the most important is the potential SQL injection, which has made that SQL server vulnerable to attack. When I click on that, it gives me description of the alert, what that alert is for, and shows me what resources have been affected, which is basically Smart Hotel SQL 1, and it's part of this, and it also shows you more details that go into what alerts, how was the alert raised, what is the vulnerable statement that's impacted by it, and then I can also take action to mitigate the threat. So Defender is continuously scanning periodically all the SQL servers, all the servers, raising up alerts, prioritizing them, and giving you a simple dashboard to view, identify, and also take action on the alerts that have been detected by Defender. Now, Defender comes with a separate charge. So I initially said, if you have SA, Arc for SQL Server is part of the SA. Defender has a separate charge, but it comes heavily discounted if you're using it through Arc. And it's probably one of our most used service. So I guess that was it, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So let me hand it back to Lance. So what have we announced here at the PaaS Summit?
Yeah, absolutely.
To take this further. Everything we showed so far was available, even if it says preview in the, but this is the real preview capability.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, what we'll show from here on out, this is in public preview as of this week, and it is starting to roll out to all the major regions. I think we support about 15 regions right now. So yeah, everything that I'm about to show you now is released to public preview, and you can actually start to use it when you get home. So performance. everything we've kind of talked about so far has been about, collecting inventory, collecting metadata, getting some recommendations either from the best practices assessment tool or from the Defender tool to help me improve my SQL Server estate. I think that the very most common question that we have gotten from our customers after we show them all of this is, okay, the inventory is great, Defender's great, best practice assessment's great. They ask questions about, things like being able to create databases and things like that also from the portal. But I would say even more common than that is, can I see the performance of my SQL servers from within Azure? So as of this week, that answer is yes. So what we are doing is we are collecting SQL performance metrics from your Arc-enabled SQL Server across these different categories here. You'll be able to see active sessions, CPU, memory, and storage utilization, your storage IOPS. We're collecting about 60 different performance counters. We are already collecting database properties and weight stats. We're just working on building the UI to visualize those on the dashboard now. And I do want to make one thing clear. On your Arc-enabled SQL Server, we're not collecting any PII data that's personally identifiable information. We're not collecting that's identifiable to the user, and we're not collecting any customer content. So we're not collecting anything about the data itself. We're not collecting your query text. All of that is not being collected. This is all high-level organizational identifiable information and system metadata. So just to put that out there. So how does that all work, you're probably wondering? Well, basically, we have this question in the back. Do you mind if I hold on just 1 second? We're just running a little short on time, and I might answer it here in just a second. So basically on this diagram here, in the lower left-hand corner, these are your Arc-enabled SQL servers that you've Arc-enabled through the great instructions that Dhananjay gave us at the beginning. And we are collecting DMB dataset information from those SQL servers, as well as the service logs for our service, and securely sending them up to Azure to a telemetry pipeline. And then you as the customer over here on the lower right-hand side, you're able to go into Azure and view a performance dashboard, which I'll give a demo here in just a second, for your Arc-enabled SQL Server. And all that's being securely pulled into the dashboard for your given SQL Server so that you can start to see that performance data right from within Azure. No need to jump to another tool, no need to RDP into your SQL Server to run DMV queries. It's already being done for you and being pulled into Azure. No data stores that you need to manage, nothing like that. And let me go on just one more slide here, and I will pause here in just a second. The collection's automatic. There's really nothing that you as the customer need to do. I will say there's a few criteria in order to get the automatic collection to work. So you need to upgrade the SQL Server extension to our latest release. So Dhananjay, talked about that when you Arc-enable your server, there is a SQL Server extension that gets installed. We update that extension regularly, usually about once a month. So you just need to update it to the November release, and that'll be available to you hopefully this week, if it's not available already. This is only working today on standard and enterprise editions. We hope to add more editions in the future. It does need to be running on Windows, and it does have to be after 2012, I actually learned today. So Windows OS later than 2012. Your license type needs to be set to license with software assurance or pay-as-you-go. And there is one more additional URL you need to open up for telemetry.arcdataservices.com. And there's no cost during the public preview. We haven't determined pricing yet for GA, but we are hoping that this will be an attractive option price-wise as well for our customers, perhaps very low cost or no cost. So I'll pause here for a sec, and I'll take your question, if you still have one. Yeah, fantastic question. So the question was, is the raw data available so that I can use it to build a Grafana dashboard on my own? Yes? So that is not a capability that we have yet today, but it is on our roadmap. I'll even show you here in just in a second all of the things that we're working on behind the scenes on the roadmap. Basically, what we're going to enable, let me jump back here to this diagram here. What we will enable in the future is, here's this data store that's being managed by Azure. You would actually be able to take a copy of that data store, and if you want to manage your own data store of all the telemetry data that we're collecting, you'd be able to do that and do whatever you want with it. So you could send it out to Grafana, You could, send it out to Grafana. You could, manage however long you want to retain it and things like that. Make sense?
You're not going into log analytics with this,
No. Yep. No login analytics on this one. So, good question.
What's the collection interval on the database?
The collection, what?
Collection interval?
Collection interval. Yeah, great question. So let me go back here. So most of these different data sets. So by the way, everything I'm about to say right now is all documented. So you can definitely go and check out our documentation. I think the link for that is AKMS/Arc-SQL monitoring. Might be wrong on that, but it is on the regular Arc docs I mentioned earlier. So for all the utilization metrics, we're collecting those every 15 seconds. Most of the performance counters are collecting every 60 seconds. And then kind of the slow changing ones like database properties, those are being collected every 5 minutes. Yep. So, yep.
How long is storing data?
Yeah, so we're storing right now every 2 days is our retention period on our side. And in the performance dashboard, you'll see here, you'll be able to go back 1 day for now, but we're going to slowly increase the retention period and give you the ability to look back further and further in the data. So with that, let me actually jump over to the portal and show you a live demo of this working, and then I'll take more questions after for sure. Okay, so we're back to the portal. So again, here's my Arc-enabled SQL Server. I jumped over, the smart hotel isn't smart enough to have the, have the performance monitoring yet. But here I am on my SQL Server. You can see here it's the same information that Dhananjay was showing earlier. I can see I'm running a 2019 on standard edition, running on Windows. I can see that the license type's been set to paid. And basically a new option that's showing up here is this performance dashboard. It does have a preview label on it because it is actually in public preview. And this dashboard will load up here in just a couple of seconds. And it will work. Yeah, like you mentioned, slow Wi-Fi a little bit. But yeah, here it is. This is kind of a test box, so it is a little sleepy here. I'll start out here by clicking on the time range. By default, we are looking at the last hour, but you can zoom in to the last 15 minutes or so, or you can span it out, like I mentioned, to the past 24 hours. And we'll kind of slowly expand that look back period for you over time. So you can see here that there is a huge, everything good? Yeah?
Just go ahead.
Okay, sounds good. There was a CPU utilization spike a couple of hours ago. Looks like at 1:19 p.m. local time. And so, that's something I could look into from a performance standpoint. And as I'm actually scrolling through this dashboard, which by the way, you don't even have to set up this dashboard. We give you some default options here of all the high-level metrics that you probably want to take a look at. So I scrolled past kind of the data storage I/O, the data storage utilization. I already added some charts on here for log file size, log files use size. I could remove those charts if they're not interesting to me. And I can actually click up here to add chart and add a new chart to this group here. So here you can kind of start to see the breadth of data that we're collecting. So for example, I could add a chart for active sessions and plot those on here. I mentioned earlier that we collect about 60 different performance counters. You can kind of see the whole breadth of those here. So anything from temp tables to latches to log file size to shrinks, page reads. There's a whole host of performance metrics in here that you can add on here. We'll add log growths. Probably won't be too many on this sleepy server here, but I'll plot it on here. And basically, as I mentioned, this is starting to give you a high-level overview of the performance of your SQL Server. Anyone that has access to Azure has access to these resources would be able to come on here and see the performance dashboard. Like I mentioned, there's no need to jump over to another system or RDP into the solution. I was presenting this to one of my healthcare customers a couple of weeks ago, and the guy was really excited. He's like, yeah, this is, I can see the vision. There's more metrics that I want, of course, and I want some more functionality like alerting and things like that. But this is great because my boss's boss would be able to come on here and just see the performance dashboards rather than just me having him to get a login to another system or bugging me to run a query. He can just come on here and see it himself. So he was particularly excited about that. So, and then yeah, go ahead.
Do you expect any performance impact on the server?
Yeah, great question. So the question was, can we expect a performance impact? So what we've seen so far from our private preview customers and our own internal testing, the performance impact is negligible, less than 5% CPU utilization for sure. We are working on writing up a white paper to kind of more broadly publish that. Yeah, correct. Yeah, it's all low weight and things like that. That was definitely our number one priority, is to make sure we're not impacting anything from a performance standpoint. So stay tuned for more details on that, but what we've seen so far in our testing is less than 5% CPU hit for sure, and more in the range of like 1 to 2 really, so.
Server uptime in this dashboard, like a SQL Server uptime, for example, when you restart services, should be
Good question. We don't have uptime yet, but that is a good metric. So actually, let me show you one other thing. This is kind of funny. So there's a feedback button here at the top, and there's a feedback button through all the pages on the portal. So if there is a particular metric that you're looking for, please go ahead and click this feedback and let us know what you're looking for if it's not there yet. So we don't have uptime right now, but if that's something that would be useful to you, I would love to hear from you. There's an option here. By default, it's all anonymous feedback, but if you'd like to talk to me, I'd love to talk to you. So go ahead and check this box, and we can reach out and have a two-way dialogue for sure. So, and then I think you had a question?
Just I think you have any thoughts or long-term roll-up, so take this after 24, 48 hours of real-time data, take that and roll it up to a 30-day.
Oh yeah, aggregating across. That is, so once we kind of unlock the ability for you to kind of take a copy of your own data, that's something that you would be able to do. Like Kusto comes, Azure Data Explorer comes with the ability to kind of have a hot cache, if you will, and then have a cold storage, or you can send it to a data lake for kind of more optimal cost savings and things like that. So yeah, there's definitely some options that you could do. So, and then I'll close with this last slide, at least on the performance dashboard side. So perfect. So what's coming, particularly on the performance performance monitoring. So alerting is obviously a really key piece to observability. You don't have time to stare at dashboards all day, I'm sure. So alerting will definitely be one of the next things that we'll work on from a performance monitoring standpoint. Also building at-scale dashboards. What I kind of showed you today is going into each individual SQL Server instance. That's also time-consuming, so we're going to provide you an at-scale view so you can see all of your SQL Server's performance in a more aggregated format. I mentioned that we don't pull query text today, but we know that one of the common questions, the common problems that DBAs run into is being able to identify and remediate long-running queries. So we're working on a secure solution for that. We're in kind of the design phase on that. I talked about being able to take a copy of the data into your own data store. Something that's really exciting, that I'm really excited about, is migration assessments. So if you have ambitions to migrate to Azure, your data workloads to Azure, Azure Arc will soon become a mechanism that will help you out with that. And what I mean by that is we are going to use the performance data that we're collecting on your SQL Server instances over the running 30-day period, and basically generate a migration assessment report for you and let you know the readiness of your SQL Server to migrate to Azure SQL VM or Azure SQL Database or Azure SQL MI. And it'll basically say, okay, you're ready to go to Azure SQL VM, click here to get started. And here's the recommended size of VM that we recommend for you based on the performance data that we collected over the past 30 days. If you're wanting to go to Azure SQL DB, but you're not quite ready yet, it'll give you a laundry list of things to check out so you can get ready for that migration. And what we mean by continuous in this sense is we'll probably run this assessment about once a week. So you're always up to date with how ready you are to start migrating to Azure. So, and then there's a whole host of other features that we've dreamed up on as a product group perspective, being able to view the logs in the portal, improving the support experience if you do need to contact Azure support for any reason, to help improve the support process there as well. So, and that's about all we have to share with you. Thanks for listening. We'd love to answer any last minute questions, but hopefully this gave you a really holistic view of all of the tools that you have available to you to observe your SQL servers and improve them in your lives. So thanks so much.
Yeah. We'll be here for Q&A if you have any questions, and then please fill out your surveys. Let us know if this is useful or not, and Lance has included our contacts, so feel free to reach out to us
Yep.
if you want to be part of the preview.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
Thank
Enjoy the
you.
rest of PASS.